Can you make a better cheeseburger than McDonald's? It's one of my go-to questions when I facilitate in person, or anywhere, I guess. And every hand goes up. But then I ask, who can make those same burgers at McDonald's the same scale or volume? Yeah, you guessed it. Not a single hand. That's what makes McDonald's so impressive. Tens of thousands of locations across 100 plus countries, serving 60 plus million people every day, and they do it fairly consistently. They know their customers' needs and they deliver value effectively, efficiently, and consistently. Every business wants to be effective and efficient, but nearly everyone I talk to doesn't know what that means or what it requires. They can't articulate to me or their people how to make it happen. We know intuitively that to be a good at business is to deliver your product or service both effectively and efficiently. But what does that really mean and how do we define it? How do you measure it? That's important. That's what we're going to get into, and I will give you the foundation to begin to define, measure, and articulate to your people what it really means to be effective and efficient. And it all starts with value. Again, we use this word, value, all the time, but most people struggle to articulate what it really is. I have three criteria that must be met, all three, for something to be considered a value add. And if all three aren't met, then it's some kind of waste. So first, the customer has to be willing to pay for it. The customer defines what value is. They set the expectations and parameters. It has to transform the good or service that you're working on. It's number two. So just moving papers from an outbox to an inbox, that's not transformative, that's waste. And three, it has to be done right the first time. This is the easiest to understand because any type of rework is an obvious waste. When one or more of these criteria aren't met, then I know there is some kind of waste, but before we get into waste, I want to go deeper into how customers define value and what we can do about it. So let's dig into that first question. Is the customer willing to pay for it? Sometimes this seems obvious, but we want to do better. We don't want to simply satisfy customers, we want them to be thrilled. To do this, we must truly understand what the customer is asking for and what they truly want or need. To do this, I ask people why anyone buys a lawnmower, and people typically say, to cut your grass. That seems obvious, right? You don't buy the lawnmower because you want it. You do it or buy it because you have a job to be done. The job to be done framework helps us explore this concept. This is also very closely related to the critical to quality tree, where we break down the core need, quality drivers, and performance requirements. And once we understand this, we can create measures and metrics associated with it to help us know if we're actually hitting the target. Another incredibly helpful tool to use when you're reviewing or thinking about value is the process map. When I facilitate this, I tell people to visualize a physical thing going through a process, even if that's a virtual or electronic product or service. Because for instance, if you request a quote for a new car insurance maybe, I want you to imagine that your request is like a physical thing as it travels. The process starts with the request, and then that request moves through a process until it's finally delivered. It will make stops. People will take it and work on it, and we can see that thing move from request to delivery. But I take this step further, and I consider the customer experience, or CX, related to user experience and user interface, but customer experience. And I want you to think about it throughout the entire process. How long do they wait? Are they communicated with while they're waiting? So they know their request is being worked on, because we've all been there. We've all experienced the frustration when working with a company or maybe even a restaurant. Like you get seated at a table, no one comes by, no one brings you water, no one acknowledges you, and you start to wonder, does my server even know that I'm here? And while you wait, you sit under a vent and you get blasted with AC and now you're freezing. So your introduction into this experience has not been great so far. And those are the things we want to understand, whatever our process or organization is. And all of these aspects converge at the end of a project or a product launch, the delivery. And that's where most projects fail. People forget that the customer defines value, not us. What happens is people assume what value is. We get scope creep, we get off target, and the bigger the project is and the more time that's spent developing without learning or iterating through this, getting feedback, the more likely it is to fail and the more expensive it will be. So, the 3 questions, they help us know if we have achieved value add, or if we haven't, then we know there is some kind of waste to be eliminated. I define 9 different types of waste using the acronym WORM PIT. Yes, it's funny, but it works. It stands for waiting, overproduction, rework, motion, processing, prioritization, inventory, intellect, and transportation. Waiting is the gap between when something was requested and when it's being worked on. Or if you work in a knowledge work environment, you can't move forward because you're waiting on someone or something else. And that waiting, where you're unable to make progress, that is the waste. Overproduction is when we've produced too much. Or maybe, we have all been here, you buy too many groceries and then they expire before you can eat them. Grocery stores do this too, and then they throw it out. That's waste. Rework. There was a mistake, and we have to fix it or do it again. The restaurant prepares your steak well done, but you ordered it medium rare, so that you have to cook a new steak. Motion is the physical movement of people. To get to my next meeting, I have to change floors and walk. That's a waste of time and energy. Processing is to beat the dead horse. Think over processing. You've heard this before. All right, we're beating the dead horse. We have analysis paralysis. We're overthinking or over-engineered. We've over-processed. Prioritization is anything that distracts you from working on the one most important or highest priority item. If it isn't the most important thing, we have to ask, why are we working on it? Because it doesn't matter if it's the second priority item. If I'm not working on my top thing, then I'm wrong. Inventory. Inventories take up space and money, and they have to be managed. In a perfect world, we wouldn't have any inventory, only exactly what we need when we need it. This is the concept of just enough, just in time. So whether you have an inventory of cars, groceries, or even a backlog of things that you need to work on, if things are just sitting there and they're waiting, that inventory is now costing you time and money. Intellect is failing to use people's talents and potential. People also not doing the right work could be considered a type of waste. So for instance, if we have an amazing accountant or a chef, somebody with a specific skill set, that's where their time should be spent. It's not that taking out the trash is beneath them, it's that we really need and want them to be doing what they're good at. Anyone can take out the trash, but not everyone can do the accounting, the book work, or go and do specific tasks. And then lastly, transportation. This is the physical movement of a product or service. So whereas motion was us moving around, transportation is the thing moving around. This is why foreign automakers will create a plant in America, because it's cheaper and faster and easier than shipping them all the way across the ocean. So we've defined waste, and we know what to look for, but how do we find it? We discussed process maps, and they're great, but they shouldn't be the only thing that we have and use. You have to go to where the work actually is. Go and see it, be a part of it, experience it. And then next, you need to set up the retrospective, or as we often call it, just the retro. The retro is the dedicated time where you're going to ask things like, what isn't working well and what is working well? Without clear definitions, though, or standards, measurements, it's going to be hard for people to be able to answer this because they don't know what to say. The process probably doesn't feel broken because they're used to it. So one of my favorite questions is, tell me what frustrates you, or what frustrates you. What do you hate? What do you think is stupid? And maybe you question why we even do it. I won't be offended, no hard feelings. If it's stressing you out, I want to know about it. Let's just start there. That stress and frustration is usually a perfect sign for something waste. Like some kind of waste is there. All right, we defined waste, we've identified it. Now we've got to make some changes. It's best to approach this like we're doing an experiment. So I always say, like, just act like a scientist. That means we don't get too attached to the change, to the idea, or to the outcome. Simply ask, what do we want to try? And if it works, great, but if not, we will try something else. Keep in mind that changes always come with a risk of unintended issues. So if you experience it, simply revert back, go back to the drawing board, create a new hypothesis, a new design, and a new experiment. And we're going to keep doing this until forever. Why? Because customer demands, needs, and expectations change. Blockbuster failed to change, and Netflix put them out of business. Kodak failed to change. BlackBerry, Borders Books, like the list goes on and on. So here's the kind of the big loop in summary of everything we've talked about. Start by asking what value is. Remember that your customer defines value. Your customer has a job to be done. Map the entire process to determine the customer experience and how effectively and efficiently we satisfy their needs by identifying, calling out value add and waste, wherever it is in the process. Relentlessly remove waste and continuously learn and adapt to add more value to your customers. This may seem simple, and for the most part it is, but it's not always easy. So don't expect to crush it your first time. Keep that learning and growth mindset. Pursue progress instead of perfection, and you'll do great and have fun doing it. And I want you to let us know, how's your journey going? Tell us in the comments, and I look forward to hearing from you.